Relax, little wife. I don't bite unless you ask me to. Luca's voice was low, a dark velvet rumble that vibrated against Amara's ear. She was pressed gently but firmly against the heavy oak door of the master bedroom, her breath hitching in her throat. She looked up at him, expecting to see the monster everyone in Chicago feared. Instead, she saw a man looking at her with a hunger that had nothing to do with violence. He was shirtless now, his chest broad and tattooed, his eyes half-lidded and amused. Amara stammered, her hands resting tentatively on his bare arms. I don't know what to do with you. Luca leaned in closer, his nose brushing against her jawline, sending a shiver straight down her spine. Then let me show you, he whispered. You've spent your whole life serving everyone else, Amara. Tonight, you don't lift a finger. He stepped back, extending his hand to her. It wasn't a command. It was an invitation to a world she never thought she belonged in. She expected a beast. She expected pain. Instead, on her wedding night, the most dangerous man in the city was looking at her like she was the only water in a desert. But to understand why a Mafia king was ready to kneel for his maid, we have to go back 30 minutes. 30 minutes earlier. Click! The sound of the lock sliding home echoed through the room like a gunshot. Amara stood by the massive king-sized bed, clutching the hem of her torn, dirty maid's dress. The adrenaline from the attack on the mansion was fading, leaving only a cold, creeping dread. She watched Luca pace the room. He moved like a predator, ripping off his ruined suit jacket and tossing it onto a leather chair. He began to unbutton his cuffs, his movements sharp and angry. She knew the rumors. Luca Moretti breaks whatever he touches. And now, by law, she was his to break. "Do you—" She trembled so hard the words barely came out. "Do you want me to undress, sir?" Luca stopped moving. The air in the room seemed to freeze instantly. He turned slowly, his face unreadable. "We are married now, Amara. In this room you do not call me sir, you call me Luca." He began to walk toward her. Amara flinched. She squeezed her eyes shut, bracing herself for the rough grab, the harsh words, the pain she had been warned about. But he didn't grab her. He walked right past her. Amara opened one eye, confused. She watched him walk into the ensuite bathroom. The sound of running water filled the silence. A moment later, he returned carrying a basin of steaming water and a soft white cloth. He placed the basin on the plush carpet. Then Luca Moretti, the man who made politicians and police captains tremble, sank to his knees. Amara gasped, "Luca, what are you doing?" "Sit," he said gently, nodding to the edge of the bed. "But I'm the maid. I should be cleaning." "Sit." She obeyed, sitting on the edge of the mattress, her heart hammering. She watched him take her bruised, soot-stained foot in his large, rough hands. The contrast was unthinkable, his lethal power against this tender act. He dipped the cloth in the warm water and began to wash the blood and dirt from her skin. He moved with a reverence she had never experienced in her life. "You run too much, Amara," he murmured, wiping a smudge of ash from her ankle. "You run for other people. You're always saving everyone else. Tonight, you rest." Amara stared down at the top of his head. Her fear was evaporating, replaced by a confusing, overwhelming heat. "Why?" she whispered, tears pricking her eyes. "Why are you doing this? I'm just the maid you were forced to marry. I'm nobody." Luca stopped. His thumb caressed the arch of her foot, sending a jolt of electricity through her. He looked up, and for the first time, the mask of the Mafia boss slipped completely. "Forced?" he asked softly. "Is that what you think?" He reached into the pocket of his trousers and pulled out a small, crumpled object. He held it up to the light. It was a faded, stained yellow ribbon. "I didn't force this marriage to own you, Amara," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I forced it to save you." Amara stared at the ribbon. A memory, sharp and sudden, crashed into her head. "The alleyway," she breathed. 10 years ago," Luca said, his eyes shining. "A starving boy was bleeding out behind the bakery. A little girl, braver than any soldier I have ever met, ran out. She fought off 3 boys, twice her size. She gave the bleeding boy her lunch, and she tied a yellow ribbon around his arm to stop the flow." "Amara, that was you?" "I have been in love with you since I was 10 years old, Amara. I watched you from the shadows. I waited until I was strong enough to protect you from the people who hurt your family. I didn't marry you for power. I married you because I cannot breathe in a world where you don't exist." Amara looked at the man kneeling before her. The monster was a myth. The guardian was real. She slid off the bed, sinking to her knees on the carpet to meet him at eye level. She reached out, her hand trembling, and took the yellow ribbon from his palm. "You kept it," she whispered. "It was the only good thing I had." She reached up and cupped his face. His stubble was rough against her palm, but he leaned into her touch like a man finally coming home. "Then stop talking, Luca," she whispered, "and kiss your wife." The air in the room crackled, electric and heavy, as the distance between them vanished. Amara leaned in. Luca leaned in. And then their lips met. It wasn't the rough, demanding kiss of a Mafia don. It was desperate. It was the kiss of a drowning man finally finding air. Amara's hands tangled in the hair at the nape of his neck, pulling him closer, while Luca's large hands framed her face, holding her as if she were made of fragile glass that might shatter under his touch. For a moment, the gunfire, the contract, and the danger outside the heavy oak doors ceased to exist. There was only the heat of his skin and the terrifying realization that she didn't want this to end. But then, Luca froze. He gasped, pulling back sharply as if he had been burned. "No," he breathed, his eyes wide with panic. He scrambled back, putting the width of the room between them. He ran a hand over his face, looking terrified, not of her, but of himself. "Luca?" asked Amara, her voice trembling with confusion and hurt. "Did I do something wrong?" Luca turned his back to her. He walked to the window, gripping the sill until his knuckles turned white against the dark wood. "You did everything right," he said, his voice dark and strained. "That is the problem." He turned to face her. The warmth was gone from his eyes, replaced by a cold, hard resolve that sent a chill through her. "Do you know why I never approached you in 10 years, Amara? Do you know why I watched you struggle, why I let you scrub floors while I built an empire?" Amara shook her head, clutching the faded yellow ribbon in her hand like a lifeline. Because I was a nobody?" A bitter laugh escaped his throat. "No, because in my world, love isn't a gift. It's a target." He began to pace the room, the predator returning to his cage. "My enemies know I am untouchable," he continued, his voice rising. "They know I don't care about money or power or pain, but they have been looking for a weakness. For a decade, I gave them nothing. I was a ghost. But tonight," he stopped in front of her, his gaze intense, "tonight I signed a paper, I put your name next to mine, and the moment I did that, I painted a target on your back the size of Chicago." "But you said you did it to protect me," Amara argued, stepping toward him. "You said the marriage was a shield." "It was," Luca's voice broke, the crack in his armor showing. "It was, but now the shield is becoming a cage." He walked to the wall safe hidden behind a painting. Beep, beep, beep. The sound was deafening in the quiet room. He pulled out a thick manila envelope and threw it onto the silk sheets. Thwack! "I am a selfish man, Amara. I wanted to keep you. I wanted this night. I wanted us. But that kiss, it proved something I was afraid of." "What?" "That I would burn this whole city down to keep you safe. And a man who burns cities gets his wife killed." Amara stared at the envelope. With trembling fingers, she reached out and opened it. She pulled out the document inside. It wasn't a love letter. It wasn't a contract extension. "Judicial Decree of Annulment." Signed, Luca Moretti. Amara's breath hitched. She looked up, tears pooling in her eyes, blurring her vision of him. You're divorcing me? On our wedding night?" "Annulment," Luca corrected, steeling himself. "It means the marriage never happened. Legally, you were never mine." He pointed to a black duffel bag sitting in the corner of the room. "There is $5 million in that bag, and a plane ticket to Paris leaving in 2 hours. My driver is waiting at the back exit." "Luca, stop!" "Sign the papers, Amara," he roared, trying to be the monster she expected, trying to scare her away. "Take the money, go to Paris. Find a nice, boring man who works in an office and doesn't have blood under his fingernails." "I don't want a nice man," Amara shouted back, tears streaming down her face. "I want the man who kept my ribbon." "The man who kept your ribbon is dead," Luca yelled, grabbing her shoulders and shaking her slightly. His eyes were pleading, desperate. He released her and stepped back, his chest heaving. "If you stay, Amara, you will never be safe. You will be the wife of a killer. You will wonder every time I leave the house if I am coming back." He gestured to the unlocked door. "I love you enough to die for you, Amara, but I love you too much to let you live this life with me. Please, if you ever cared about the boy in the alley, let him save you one last time. Go." Amara stood there, paralyzed, the annulment papers in one hand, the yellow ribbon in the other.